Rain pours over Seattle's skyline. Inside a $50 million mansion, the son of a billionaire is dying, surrounded by the best doctors money can buy. And yet, it's a teenage food delivery boy who walks through the door and says 5 words that change everything. Please, I can help him. Seattle rain falls thick like smoke, veiling the quiet neighborhood where billionaire Richard Grant's mansion stands. Amid the lavish setting, in a grand room equipped with the most advanced medical technology, an 8-year-old boy writhes between life and death. His name is Liam Grant, the only son of Richard, a man powerful enough to move the stock market with a nod, yet now helpless before the violent convulsions of his own child. The monitor flashes relentlessly. Each long, piercing beep cuts through the air and through the heart of a father drowning in despair in the corner of the room. 17 of the world's top doctors, from Johns Hopkins, Zurich, and Tokyo, surround the large hospital bed. They whisper, adjust equipment, administer drugs, yet every gaze holds the same unspoken truth. They are powerless. Heart rate dropping fast. Dr. Hayes, he's going into arrest, a nurse shouts. We've tried every drug, every possible protocol, replies Dr. Caroline Hayes, the world-renowned neurologist, her voice trembling. Then, the door bursts open. A young man in a food delivery uniform steps in, rain still dripping from his jacket, a small name tag gleaming on his chest. Marcus Lee. He looks no older than 18, thin, soaked hair plastered to his forehead. In his hand, he clutches a small, worn fabric pouch. His eyes are filled with urgency. His voice trembles, yet carries conviction. I can help that boy. The entire room freezes. A doctor spins around. Who are you? Get out. This is a restricted area. A security guard moves toward him, but Marcus doesn't flinch. He reaches into the pouch and pulls out a handful of dried, gray-brown leaves, their pungent scent spreading through the air thick with antiseptic. My grandmother taught me about seizures like this, Marcus says, voice breaking but eyes clear. I saw the boy through the window while making a delivery. This isn't a normal seizure. It's a toxic reaction. These herbs, they can help flush it out. Silence engulfs the room. Dr. Hayes stiffens for a moment. A teenager, a food delivery boy, daring to speak among the best medical minds in the world. Absurd. But when she glances back, Liam's skin has turned blue, his lips fading to a frightening shade of gray. Richard's voice cracks, raw from desperation. Do something! You're the best doctors money can buy. Why is my son still like this? No one answers. The room is suffocating with that awful kind of silence, the kind that falls when science runs out of words. And in that moment, Marcus steps forward. He looks straight at the broken father before him and says, softly but firmly, if you don't let me try, he won't make it. Please, let me help. Every eye turns to Richard. The billionaire lowers his head. His eyes are bloodshot and wet. 1 second, 2, 3. Then he whispers, do it. God help us. Marcus rushes to the bedside. His hands tremble, but his movements are steady. He crushes the dry leaves in his palms and mixes them into a cup of warm water. A sharp, earthy scent fills the air, bitter and raw. He gently lifts Liam's head and whispers, hang in there, kid, just a little more. Marcus pours small sips into the boy's mouth, then places 2 fingers on his neck and wrist, exactly where Grandma Loretta once taught him. 1, 2, 3. Everyone holds their breath. Seconds stretch into what feels like an eternity. Then, Liam's chest rises faintly. A breath, then another. The color slowly returns to his cheeks. The monitor's beeping steadies. Beep, beep, beep. The room goes utterly still. Doctors exchange glances. None of them can believe what just happened. A nurse bursts into tears. Dr. Hayes stands frozen, then slowly steps toward Marcus, her voice barely above a whisper, as if afraid to break the miracle. "What did you just do?" Marcus swallows hard, speaking softly. "I just did what my grandma used to do, when the hospital medicine stopped working." The delivery boy lowers his head, his hands still shaking, while around him, the most educated minds in the world stand silent, as if they've just witnessed a miracle science could not explain. 3 months ago, the Grant estate was still filled with laughter. With messy brown hair, 8-year-old Liam Grant loved running through the marble hallways with his remote control plane, often spilling his father's coffee all over the polished desk. Richard Grant, the billionaire once dubbed by Forbes as the man whose touch turns everything to gold, prided himself on being in control of everything: his company, the markets, and even his son's future. Until that morning. In a gleaming marble kitchen, Liam sat down for breakfast, a perfectly crafted meal prepared by the family's private chef. Organic eggs, gluten-free toast, and cold-pressed juice. He was laughing with his father when, suddenly, that laughter stopped. Liam's eyes rolled back. The spoon fell from his hand, clattering against the tiles with a cold metallic ring. His small body began to convulse violently. "Liam! My God, Liam!" Richard screamed, pulling his son into his arms, his voice breaking under a terror he had never known before. The seizure lasted 2 minutes, but it felt like a lifetime to Richard. When it finally stopped, he immediately called his private medical team. A helicopter arrived within 10 minutes. But what followed left even the most brilliant doctors utterly powerless. Blood, urine, brain, genetic, tissue, spinal fluid, all perfect. No disease, no virus, no genetic disorder. "No identifiable medical cause," the doctor said, in a calm tone that felt cruel. "That's impossible." "Do it again," Richard snapped, his hands trembling. They did. Once, twice. 3 more rounds of tests. Every result came back the same. The seizures returned, each one longer, more violent. Anticonvulsants failed, hormone therapy failed. Even the most advanced monitoring equipment couldn't predict the next episode. Dr. Caroline Hayes, the celebrated neurologist who had saved hundreds of critical brain cases, stared helplessly at the flickering ECG screen. In all her years of medicine, she had never seen a healthy child suffer from something so impossible. Meanwhile, Liam began to fear everything: the light, sleep, even food. The boy who once dreamed of becoming a pilot now sat curled up in the corner of his room, eyes empty, silent. One night, as the rain tapped gently against the window, Liam whispered, his voice barely a breath, "Dad, why am I like this? Did I do something wrong?" Richard couldn't answer. The man once hailed as a tech genius who always had a solution for every problem, now sat motionless, eyes hollow, head in his hands, as if every ounce of control in his life had crumbled. From that night on, he became someone else. No longer the powerful billionaire, but a terrified father. Every slight sound in the house made him flinch, fearing it was another seizure. He chartered private jets to Boston, Zurich, Tokyo, anywhere a world-class doctor might offer hope. The medical bills soared past $5 million, but the outcome never changed. No one knew why. No one could save him. One evening, Dr. Hayes spoke softly to him, almost apologetically. "I fear this isn't neurological, Mr. Grant. Maybe we're looking in the wrong place." But Richard wouldn't listen. He didn't believe in intuition or tradition. He believed in data, in machines, in numbers calculated to the thousandth of a second. And then, 3 months later, on a gray, rain-drenched afternoon in Seattle, every doctor gave up, and fate led them to the one person with no degree, no white coat, only a brave heart and a pouch of herbs. His name was Marcus Lee, and with the wisdom passed down from his grandmother in Atlanta, he would accomplish what the entire medical world could not: save the son of a billionaire. Over 2,000 miles from Seattle, in the southern suburbs of Atlanta, there stood an old apartment building, the kind where sunlight had to fight its way through dusty blinds. Inside one small corner unit, the afternoon light streamed through the window and fell across dozens of glass jars filled with dried leaves, roots, and seeds. There were no high-end machines, no expensive drugs, only the gentle, earthy scent of mint, ginger, and lemongrass. That was the home of Marcus Lee, 18 years old, lean, brown-skinned, with bright eyes that sometimes carried the shadow of exhaustion. By day, Marcus worked as a food delivery boy, pedaling through the streets on his old bike. By evening, he stocked shelves at a grocery store. On weekends, he mowed lawns and fixed leaky pipes for neighbors, anything to help pay for his grandmother's medicine. He lived with Grandma Loretta, a 72-year-old woman with silver hair like mist, a warm voice, and hands covered in small scars, marks from over half a century of harvesting, boiling, and mixing herbs to heal people in her community. They called her the healer of South Atlanta. No degree, no clinic. Just a tiny kitchen lined with jars labeled in her shaky handwriting. And yet, everyone in the neighborhood, young and old, came to her when they were sick. Not because they couldn't afford doctors, but because they believed. "Miss Loretta just needs to look at your tongue or touch your wrist, and she knows what's wrong," one neighbor said. "Take her medicine, and you're fine in 3 days." Marcus grew up surrounded by the smell of soil, leaves, and love. While other kids played video games, he sat by the window, watching his grandmother crush roots with a stone mortar while telling stories. Long ago, our ancestors didn't have hospitals or fancy pills. They lived, healed, and learned by listening to nature. Every leaf, every breeze, every drop of water has a voice. You just have to listen. One evening when Marcus was 14, Grandma Loretta handed him an old leather notebook. Inside were hundreds of handwritten herbal formulas, with penciled side notes like, "For cold-induced cough, use ginger, honey, and wild lemon. For mild poisoning, licorice root and fennel seed. Post-meal convulsions, use herb mix number 12, liver detox and kidney activator." Marcus looked up and asked, "Grandma, why don't you teach more people about this?" She smiled softly. "They wouldn't believe, child. The world trusts what's shiny and expensive. But remember this: Actual knowledge doesn't live in labs. It lives in hands that can feel. From that day on, Marcus began memorizing every detail. With his eyes closed, he learned to tell herbs apart just by their scent. He knew when the soil was just moist enough to grow mint. He could press 2 fingers on the right spot to ease a headache. Sometimes Loretta would hold his hand and say, "Marcus, you have something special. The gift. You don't just learn with your eyes, but with your heart. One day, you'll have to use that gift to save someone, not for money, not for fame, but because it's the right thing to do." He smiled, thinking it was just one of her gentle lessons. He didn't know then that this very promise would one day lead him to a mansion far away in Seattle, where he'd stand face to face with 17 doctors and save a child's life using the very wisdom his grandmother taught him. Late at night, after his delivery shifts, Marcus would sit by the window, watching the city glow orange under streetlights, and write new notes in his grandmother's old journal. Lessons from customers, from strangers, from life. On the final page he wrote, "One day I'll become a doctor, but not the kind who only reads books. I'll be the kind who listens to people and to nature." Outside, crickets sang softly. Grandma Loretta smiled in her sleep. And Marcus Lee, still unaware, was only days away from the moment his grandmother had spoken of. The day fate would come knocking. A heavy gray rain hung over Seattle like a silver veil. On the tree-lined road near Lake Washington, Marcus Lee's silver e-bike stopped in front of the gate of a magnificent mansion, the Grant Estate. He was 18, wearing a cheap raincoat and a delivery bag slung over his shoulder. On his phone, the app read, "Delivery for the Grant residence, staff entrance." Marcus took a deep breath and wiped rain from his brow. He had delivered food for hundreds of people, but this place felt different. Tall gates, polished stone walls, security scanners. Everything radiated a cold remoteness, like another world. He gave a wry smile. People say America is the land of the free. Apparently freedom has its own barcode. He pressed the staff entrance bell. A security guard opened the door, took the bag and nodded. That should have been the end of Marcus's job, but seconds later a sound cut through his chest. A scream, sharp, high, choked, from a child. It pierced the rain, through the stone walls and froze Marcus in place. "Save my child! Ethan! Ethan!" A man's desperate shout. Then silence. Marcus held his breath and looked up. From the second floor he could make out flickering lights through a large window, figures in white coats moving back and forth. In the center of the room a small boy convulsed on a bed. Marcus stood motionless. His hand tightened on the bag strap. His eyes widened. The image dragged him back to a memory when he was 14, a neighborhood boy in Atlanta who had convulsions just like this. The doctor at the time had said idiopathic epilepsy, but it was Grandma Loretta who had healed him, not with hospital medicine, but with a special herbal mixture that helped the body flush out toxins. He remembered her words clearly. Sometimes people aren't sick. They're reacting to something poisonous their body can't expel. When medicine runs out of answers, listen to the body. Marcus swallowed hard. His heart pounded. He knew what he was seeing wasn't random. Something in that house was slowly killing that boy, and no one noticed. But he was only a delivery boy, a poor black kid from Atlanta. Who would believe him? The rain grew heavier. Marcus stood under the eave, clutching the small cloth pouch his grandmother always made him carry. Inside were packets of herbs. He looked up at the bright window, and in that moment he heard her voice. Marcus, you have that gift. If you can help someone and don't, that gift will be gone forever. He closed his eyes, breathed deep, and whispered, Sorry, Grandma. I can't stand by. Marcus ran around to the front of the mansion. Rain stung his face, icy, but his steps didn't falter. He banged on the main gate. Is anyone inside? A child is having a seizure. I know how to help. A tall guard appeared, eyes cold as steel. Who are you? Deliveries use the back entrance. I saw the boy. I can help him. You want me to call the police? Marcus stared the man down, his voice hoarse but steady. If that boy dies because you didn't let me in, you'll live with it for the rest of your life. The air thickened. For a moment, only the rain hitting the eave could be heard. Suddenly, the guard's radio crackled. Turner, get up to the second floor. The boy's seizing again. It's bad. Doctors say this one might not make it. The guard named Turner froze. He looked at Marcus, drenched, trembling. But in his eyes was a light Turner had never seen before. Faith. You sure you know what you're doing? Turner asked. I'm not sure, but I know I have to try. Turner gave a slight nod. Come with me. If you're lying, I'll have you arrested. But if you're right. He didn't finish the sentence. Marcus followed him down a long, gleaming corridor that felt as cold and sterile as a hospital. The smell of antiseptic mixed with expensive roses. A soulless luxury. They raced up the stairs. Marcus's heart hammered like a war drum. Above, the cries in the machines echoed. Then, Marcus pushed the door and stepped into the room of destiny. He inhaled, squared his shoulders, and spoke, his voice cutting through the chaos like steel. I can help that boy. The hospital room was steeped in silence. Only the soft, rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor remained, like the fragile pulse of hope returning to life. Liam lay still now, his small face slowly regaining color, his breathing calm and even. And Marcus, drenched in rain, wearing his worn delivery uniform, still stood there, hands trembling, eyes red. He had just saved the billionaire Richard Grant's son, with a handful of dried leaves from his grandmother's old cloth pouch. No one spoke. The doctors exchanged bewildered glances. Dr. Caroline Hayes, a world-class neurologist from Johns Hopkins, took a hesitant step back, staring at the boy as if witnessing a living paradox. An 18-year-old food delivery kid had just done what 17 of the world's top physicians could not. Oh my God, she whispered. What did you just do? Marcus was breathing heavily, his voice hoarse from rain and adrenaline. My grandmother taught me, some seizures aren't neurological. They happen when toxins build up in the body. The body tries to force them out, but it's too weak to finish the job. These herbs help the liver and kidneys flush toxins faster. Richard stepped forward, his bloodshot eyes filled with exhaustion. You're saying my son was poisoned? Yes, sir, Marcus nodded. But not by something in his blood, by something around him. The room fell utterly still. Dr. Hayes frowned. If it's a toxin, the blood work would show it, but every test came back clean. Marcus turned toward her, his voice soft but firm. Doctor, Sometimes the body hides what it can't expel. The toxins don't stay in the bloodstream. They settle in the fat, the skin, or the organs. If he's been exposed every day through something familiar, then maybe this house itself is the problem. The words struck like lightning through the quiet. All eyes turned to Marcus. Richard's voice cracked. "You're saying, my home is poisoning my son." Marcus bowed his head slightly, his tone calm, respectful. "I'm not saying you meant for it to happen. But sometimes the things we believe are safe and luxurious are the very things that harm us." Dr. Hayes blinked, realization dawning behind her eyes. If that's true, we need to test everything Liam touches. And so, the investigation began. Doctors and technicians spread out in white coats, collecting samples, sheets, pillows, wall paint, drinking water, even toys. Marcus stood quietly nearby, watching, an unseen witness to a storm about to break. But something caught his attention. His gaze drifted to the bathroom vanity. Rows of glittering bottles lined neatly like trophies. "Mr. Grant," Marcus asked softly, "when did you start using these products?" Richard frowned, thinking. "About 3 months ago, right before Liam's illness began. They're an imported luxury skincare line from Italy, Tuscany Pure. Completely organic, certified." Marcus picked up one of the bottles. A faint lavender scent filled the air. Pleasant, but laced with something sharp. Metallic. He twisted the cap open, brought it close to his nose, then tasted a drop. "Don't!" Dr. Hayes gasped. But it was too late. Marcus winced slightly, then swallowed, his expression tightening. "It's bitter. Cold," he murmured. "Like heavy metals, mercury, or arsenic." The air left the room. The delivery boy had just identified a poison by taste. "You said arsenic?" Richard stammered. "Yes," Marcus nodded. "My grandmother taught me. Some herbs grown in polluted soil absorb whatever's in the ground. If the soil contains heavy metals, the plants take them in. When companies extract those plants for cosmetics, what they call organic luxury can become slow poison." Dr. Hayes stared at him, disbelief mixing with admiration. "If this is true, the entire safety system's been fooled." Immediately, she ordered, "Send samples of this product to the toxicology lab. Test for heavy metals, especially mercury and arsenic." 3 days later, the results shook the medical world. The report showed levels 50 times higher than the legal safety limit. The cosmetics, bed sheets, perfumes, and body wash contained the same contamination. The brand Tuscany Pure wasn't Italian at all. It was a fake front for an unregistered Eastern European factory built near a heavy metal industrial zone. They had been selling to America's ultra-wealthy, to people who believed that expensive meant safe. Richard nearly collapsed. I poisoned my own son with the things I thought were the best." Marcus placed a steady hand on his shoulder, his voice deep and gentle. "No, sir. You didn't kill him. It was greed and deceit that did this. You were just a father, trying to love your child the best way you knew." Dr. Hayes's eyes glistened with tears. "If you hadn't come that day, the boy wouldn't have made it." Marcus smiled faintly. "No, doctor. My grandma always said, God never abandons anyone. He just waits for someone brave enough to step in when everyone else walks away. That night, the Grant estate lay still beneath the endless Seattle rain. The sharp scent of antiseptic had faded, replaced by a faint herbal aroma drifting from the sick room. A bittersweet fragrance Marcus himself had brewed. Liam slept peacefully now, his breathing even, his cheeks tinged pink again after months of pale exhaustion. In the quiet, only the soft patter of rain remained. Richard Grant sat beside his son's bed, his eyes resting on Marcus, the young man carefully adjusting the heater, folding a warm towel. There was no trace of the billionaire's pride left in him, only the silent awe of a father, watching the boy who had saved his child. "It's been so long since he slept like this," Richard whispered, his voice breaking between breaths. Marcus didn't answer. He simply smiled. Gentle, calm. "The human body is stronger than we think, sir. It just needs to be helped and believed in." Dr. Caroline Hayes stood nearby, her heart heavy as she watched. She had once been called a genius of neurology, had spoken at international conferences, yet never before had she felt compelled to admit, from the depths of her soul, that this boy understood something the rest of them had forgotten. The next morning, rare sunlight filtered through the Seattle clouds. The entire mansion felt strangely at peace. Marcus sat on the balcony gazing at the mist lifting from Lake Washington. His eyes were distant, tired, hollow, but thoughtful. He had saved a life, yet questions still swirled in his mind. What now? He was just a delivery boy. Would he simply return to his 3 jobs in quiet anonymity? Footsteps echoed behind him. Richard Grant appeared holding 2 cups of steaming coffee. He handed one to Marcus, his voice deep and steady. "I don't know how to thank you enough." Marcus smiled faintly, his tone sincere and straightforward. "You don't have to, sir. I just did what my grandmother would have done, helped when I could." "No," Richard said softly. "You did more than that. You saved me." Marcus turned, startled. "Saved you?" "Yes," Richard nodded, smiling tiredly but warmly. "I spent my whole life believing everything had a price, even health, even happiness. But when I saw you, trembling, drenched, still trying to save my son, I realized there are things money can never buy. Faith, kindness, true wisdom." The air fell still. Marcus lowered his gaze. In his dark eyes, a quiet light shimmered. "My grandma used to say, God places knowledge in the hearts of those who truly listen. I just listened." Richard studied him for a long moment. Then he said something that froze Marcus in place. "I want to fund your education. All of it." "Sir? What did you say?" "I'll pay for your studies from college through medical school. Every expense covered. And one more thing. I'd like to invite your grandmother and sister to live here, in our guest house. You'll have a salary while helping care for Liam until he fully recovers." Marcus just stared at him. He wanted to speak, but his throat tightened. He had never imagined a billionaire would say such words to him. Not in some grand office, but with such sincerity on a misty morning over 2 cups of coffee. "Sir, I can't accept that. You don't owe me anything." "No, Marcus," Richard replied gently. "This isn't repayment. It's an investment in a future I believe is far better than anything money can buy." At that, Marcus couldn't hold back his tears. He turned away, wiping his eyes, but Richard saw them. The man smiled softly. "Maybe God sent you here not just to save my son, but to save me from the prison of my own pride." That afternoon, Liam woke up completely. He blinked, spotting Marcus brewing tea in the corner. "Marcus?" he whispered. "Yeah, kiddo. You're awake. How do you feel?" Liam smiled faintly. I'm not scared anymore." Marcus froze. Just one simple sentence, but it told him everything. The miracle wasn't in the herbs, nor in medicine. It was in faith, restored. That evening, the family gathered around a long wooden table for dinner. Simple, unpretentious, full of laughter. No formalities, no performances, just warmth. Dr. Hayes recounted the events of the previous days, still awed. "I've never seen a folk remedy work so effectively. Perhaps we need to relearn humility before nature." Marcus chuckled. "My grandmother would love hearing that. She always said, when you stop seeing the world as something to cure, it will teach you how to heal." The room fell quiet. His words lingered in the air, a truth long forgotten. That night, before bed, Richard knocked on Marcus's door. He handed him an envelope. Inside, a scholarship contract and a handwritten note. "Marcus, promise me, when you become a doctor, never forget what your grandmother taught you, because true medicine begins with compassion." Marcus read it, tears falling onto the page. He smiled through them and whispered, "Thank you, sir. And, Grandma, I promise, I'll use this gift to help as many people as possible." In the days that followed, the Grant estate seemed to breathe different air. No more medical machines, no more antiseptic scent. Only the gentle fragrance of herbs drifting through the hallways, the bright laughter of young Liam, and the calm gaze of a father who had once lost faith in miracles. Marcus stayed. He spent his days beside Liam, teaching the chefs, housekeepers, and even the in-house doctors how to recognize signs of toxicity, prepare food that helps the body heal, and use simple herbs found in everyday life. No one called him the delivery boy anymore. In everyone's eyes, he had become the boy who heals. Dr. Caroline Hayes, once hailed as a genius in neurology, now stood beside Marcus, quietly learning from him, lessons no textbook had ever contained. She watched him brew ginger tea, apply herbal compresses on Liam's chest, and finally murmured, "Do you know something, Marcus? It took me 20 years to learn how to read human data, but maybe I never really learned how to read the human being himself." Marcus smiled, his voice calm and thoughtful. "Sometimes it's not the body that needs healing first. It's their faith." 3 weeks later, the official report from the U.S. Department of Health was released. The luxury brand Tuscany Pure was exposed as a fraudulent company, selling products contaminated with heavy metals to the wealthy elite. And the nation was stunned when Richard Grant himself came forward, turning over evidence and funding a nationwide recall campaign. It all began with the words of an 18-year-old boy. News outlets, TV shows, and social media exploded with the story. The name Marcus Lee spread everywhere, yet he chose silence. No interviews, no money, no spotlight. When a reporter asked, "Don't you want to be famous?" Marcus only smiled. "I didn't go there to be famous. I went there to do what was right." Instead of closing the chapter, Richard Grant began a new one. He used his corporation's entire network to launch a project called Project Clean Earth, a global campaign to test luxury consumer products for hidden toxins. He funded treatment and rehabilitation for over 300 families affected, all completely free. In every letter he sent there was a handwritten line at the bottom, made possible by the knowledge of Marcus Lee and the love of a grandmother in Atlanta. When Marcus saw that line, he chuckled. "You don't have to put my name there, sir." Richard smiled. "I have to. People need to know that miracles don't come from money. They come from simple kindness." A few days later, Marcus called home to Georgia. On the other end, Grandma Loretta was silent for a long moment and began to cry. "You did what I always believed, child, that knowledge doesn't need fame to have worth. But do you know what makes me proudest of you?" Marcus whispered. "What, Grandma?" "That you didn't let fear keep you silent." Marcus smiled, eyes glistening. "They call me the healer, Grandma. But I know the real heal is you." Time passed. Liam made a full recovery. The boy ran through the garden again each afternoon, pulling Marcus along, laughing in the sunlight. Dr. Hayes began writing a new research paper, Bridging Modern Medicine and Traditional Wisdom, inspired by the story that changed her life. And as for Richard, every time he looked out the window and saw his son and Marcus laughing in the golden light, he would whisper to himself, This was the best investment I ever made." One evening at sunset, Richard called Marcus into the library. On the table lay a document stamped with an official seal. He spoke slowly, deliberately. "Marcus, I've contacted Stanford University. They reviewed your background and want to offer you a full scholarship. I've already covered your grandmother and sister's tuition, housing, and expenses. I only ask one thing in return." Marcus waited, his heart pounding. "When you become a doctor, don't forget where you started. Don't forget who taught you to listen. Because medicine is no longer medicine if it loses compassion." Marcus clutched the letter tightly. Tears splashed onto the wooden desk. "I promise, sir," he whispered. "I'll never forget. And I'll turn your kindness into a vow to help every soul God places in my path." California sunlight stretched across the campus of Stanford University. Inside the grand lecture hall, students, professors, and medical experts from around the world gathered to hear a special presentation by Marcus Lee, now 23 years old. He was no longer the drenched delivery boy of that rainy night in Seattle. Dressed in a simple gray suit, eyes steady, and with a calm and warm voice. Behind him, on the screen, glowed the words, "The Loretta Project, when ancient wisdom and modern medicine heal together." Marcus looked over the audience and smiled softly. "5 years ago," he began, "I didn't know what medicine was. I only knew what my grandmother once told me. The earth and humanity already understand each other, if we're willing to listen. Today I want to prove she was right." He began his presentation by unveiling a vast database connecting hundreds of traditional healing practices from across cultures, African, South American, Southeast Asian, each validated through modern science. It was more than research, it was a bridge between ancient wisdom and modern medicine, between faith and reason, between the heart and the mind. In the front row sat Dr. Caroline Hayes, Richard Grant, and Grandma Loretta. Beside them, Liam, now 13, healthy, bright-eyed, and full of life. When Marcus finished, the hall rose in a standing ovation. Dr. Hayes's eyes shimmered with tears. Richard smiled, proud and peaceful. And Grandma Loretta, holding Liam's hand, whispered, "See, child, God never takes away. He only places his gifts in the hands of those brave enough to believe." Marcus stepped down from the stage. Liam ran to him and threw his arms around him. "Marcus, I want to study medicine, like you, but I don't want to just read books. I want to listen, the way you did." Marcus knelt, looking at the boy who once lay dying and was now bursting with life. He said softly, "You know, Liam, the world doesn't need more doctors who only treat illness. The world needs people who heal. And I believe you'll be one of them." Grandma Loretta came forward and embraced Marcus. "I'm so proud of you, child. You turned what I taught into something far beyond my wildest dreams." Marcus smiled, whispering in her ear, "You're the one who started it, Grandma. I just walked the path you showed me." Richard approached, resting a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "You've changed this world, Marcus. And more importantly, you've changed me." Marcus looked at him, his voice gentle as the wind. "No, sir. I only reminded you of what you already knew. That sometimes the greatest things begin with the smallest act of kindness." The light in the hall softened. The camera slowly panned toward the window, where the golden California sunset warmly bathed the campus. A narrator's voice rose, deep, calm, like a quiet breath, in this noisy world of ours, where everyone wants to speak. Sometimes the ones who truly change lives are those who listen. That day, Marcus didn't just present a project. He presented a legacy. The legacy of a wise grandmother, a boy who dared to believe, a billionaire who learned humility, and a child who was once saved. 4 souls from 4 different worlds woven into one simple truth, that healing does not belong to one class, civilization, or faith. It belongs to all of us. Healing is not a privilege. Healing is the right to live fully for every human being. Final image. Marcus, Grandma Loretta, Richard, and Liam are walking hand in hand across the Stanford courtyard beneath the golden light of dusk. The camera slowly pulls back. Warm light settles over them. Perhaps in each of us there's a Marcus, a part that knows how to love, believe, and listen. If you believe kindness can change the world, share this story. Let it reach someone who needs hope today. Thank you for watching. This is Deep Life Tales, where true stories remind us that compassion is still the most potent force on earth. Knowledge is light, but compassion, it's what keeps that light from ever going out.